What is up, people? It is TBR time. I usually record in a nice setting in like my living room where I've got some nice plants and nice good stuff to be instead of just in my ugly bookshelf in a corner. Well, it's a nice bookshelf, but it's just sitting in a corner. But I thought we'd do the video here today because, I don't know, I want to be in front of some books. I'm in a little bit of a hurry and I just want to run through the 100 books I've set for myself in 2025. Now, just saying it out loud, I'm not going to get to 100 books in 2025. I did 100 this year, but it's not happening again. I am going to be taking my time with my reads next year, syncing them in so I can give you guys better reviews and better analyses. And I'm also going to be taking on some bigger books in 2025. It's going to be pretty exciting. There's so many good books I want to read that I still gave myself 100 plus some more. So I won't get to everything we covered today. And I'm not going to go over 100 individual books. A lot of these are big series, so we'll be able to cover the 100 pretty quickly, I think. I'm not going to go too in depth on each of them. Just go a little bit about each, what I've been doing, each category I've got. We've got the series I'm currently going through that I'll be continuing in 2025, new series I'll be starting, new releases I'll be checking out, and then some standalone non-fantasy books that I'll be getting into. So starting with the series that I'm currently reading, we'll go over the book I'm reading right now. I'm reading the second book in the Illuminae Files by Jay Kristoff. I've covered this series a lot recently. It's a YA sci-fi told through a series of hacked documents, so kind of like a YA sci-fi version of Dracula, where there's just a big space corporation getting up to some very shady business and a collection of teenagers that are basically trying to stop them. Very fun stuff. The humor is absolutely hilarious. So this one I'll be continuing with the last book, Obsidio, in 2025, very early on. I'll also be continuing on with the Greenbone saga, finishing off Jade Legacy. I've talked a lot about that one too recently, so we'll just jump straight into the next one, which I'll be continuing The Realm of the Elderlings by the one and only Robin Hobb, one of my favorite authors of all time. I've read the first 4 books of Realm of the Elderlings, so the Farseer trilogy, and the first book of the Live Ship Traders, Ship of Magic, and I'll be jumping into the Mad Ship as soon as I can. So there's 12 books of the Realm of the Elderlings that I've got to go, and I do plan to do all of those in 2025. I really love Realm of the Elderlings, and it's a series I can just immerse into very quickly. The writing is so cozy, just fun classic fantasy, and it reminds me so much of The Ranger's Apprentice, which is the series that got me reading. Yes, yes, that is a middle grade, low fantasy story. It's incredible. If you want a fun light read for the holidays, you might want to check out Ranger's Apprentice, but don't expect Hobb. That's just what it reminds me of. Now, I was about to say the 2 monster series I'll be tackling. Well, both of the series I was about to say are shorter than Realm of the Elderlings, but they're denser. So The Wars of Light and Shadow by Johnny Wirtz and Malazan by Stephen Erickson. These are not series you should be reading at the same time. You should go one then the other. But I don't heed my own advice, and I like to put myself in tough situations with my reads. So with Malazan this year, I read the first 2 books, had a great time with them in March, and then I just lost motivation to get back into Memories of Ice, even though I was loving it when I was reading it, and I loved everything I've got out of Malazan so far. It's like Abercrombie taking on the Wheel of Time. So you've got really good writing, really good characters, really descriptive prose that sets a dark, real, gritty scene on a huge scale. The magic, the world building is insane. And Stephen Erickson takes on every aspect of a fantasy series, just turns it up to 10, following the Malazan Empire as it's going through a pivotal moment. Oh, incredible. The character journeys in Deadhouse Gates, I can still remember. And I'm going to be doing Malazan with a bunch of friends. And I am so excited to start back at the first book and just dive into those same characters again. It's going to be a great time. It's going to be huge. And at the same time, I'm going to be reading The Wars of Light and Shadow by Johnny Wirtz with a friend. I'm partway through the second book in the series now. This is an 11-book series. Malazan is a 10-book series. And for me, The Wars of Light and Shadow so far has been a combination of The Realm of the Elderlings, The Wheel of Time, and Malazan. The writing is dense, poetic, beautiful, super descriptive. I've talked a lot about The Wars of Light and Shadow on this channel recently, so I won't say too much more, but I've got 10 books to go on that, and I just can't wait. If you want to get started on Jani's works, in January, we are reading The Gallant, which is a prequel novella for this series. It's 120 pages. You can get it off Janny's website, and it's going to be exciting. The link for that book club is down in the description. Click on it, join it. It's completely free. It's going to be an absolute blast. Then, while we're talking about big, long, classic epics, the other series I'm going to be continuing is the Elric Saga by Michael Moorcock. I've currently got the first volume of these editions over on my bedside table. I'm reading the second book at the moment, and there is 12 more books I've got to go. Now, only 4 physical books in total, but each book has 3 to 4 stories in it, as these are shorter tales. These are just really fun reads, just single POV, Elric being a bit of a hero, a bit of a badass too. Very fun, classic fantasy, just dark vibes, guy going on quests. It's just good fun, and it's fun to see series that were very influential to my favorite writers. Then, staying along that dark, gritty fantasy vibe, I have to get back to the First Law world. I've read the first 4 books, the First Law trilogy, and then Best Served Cold. I loved them all. I had a great time with all of them, and I hear it only gets better. So many people have told me The Heroes is their favorite Joe Abercrombie book, and it's just one all-out war. The themes of war are just front and center. Really interesting stuff to check out. So I can't wait to get back to First Law. It has been such an incredible journey so far. I think I think Joe Abercrombie is going to become an all-time favorite author for me. I saw the writings on the wall with Best Served Cold. It was a really good step up from one of the funnest trilogies I read this year. And I will be finishing all the First Law books in 2025. I can't say the same for the previous 3 series. I don't know if I'll get to them because they each have 10 plus books to read. So I'll probably only get halfway through each of those series. But First Law, guys, it will be a priority. I will get to all of those. Then, changing tones completely, I'll be finishing off catching up to Matt Dinnerman with the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. I'm 5 books in so far. I've just got 2 more to go to catch up to Matt. And this is pure fun. I've talked about this one again a lot on the channel, but this discovery of progression fantasy has just been one of the best discoveries of the year. So those 2 books I will fly through very early on in the year. Then I am taking longer than I have time for at the moment. So the next 2 series I'll be finishing off. The last 2 will be the Wolf Den trilogy by Elodie Harper and the Forever Deserts trilogy. And the Wolf Den trilogy, just a really good historical fantasy, just a really good historical fiction following a slave girl from Pompeii. Just a truly beautiful story, very eye-opening. It's a very dark, bleak series, but there's just some really beautiful moments of our characters just trying to make the best of their situation and find the light. It's a very beautiful series. I'm happy I've just got 1 book to go, and we're going to finish it off very soon with the Temple of Fortuna. And then the Forever Desert, just a trilogy of novellas. The first one, The Lies of the Ajungo, just a really interesting read. It's more like a get you thinking sort of series than a fantasy story series, if that kind of makes sense. It reminded me a little bit of The Alchemist, but not to the same level, because that is a great book. Now, if I was to catch up on all those series, that would be a total of 55 books. I will not be reading all 55 of those books, but that is my intention. That is the series I want to continue. And the new series I want to start, well, more Jay Kristoff, of course. It's who I am. Jay Kristoff is the reason this whole channel exists. Well, no, that's John Gwynn, actually, but he doesn't have any books coming out next year. Jay Kristoff is my all-time favorite author, and I'm just going to continue to work through his books. So after finishing the Illuminae files that Jay Kristoff does with Amy Kaufman, they do another series together called the Aurora cycle that starts with Aurora Rising, another YA sci-fi. And literally right as I was editing this part of the video, I had a good friend message me and tell me the Aurora cycle is the worst book she has ever read. So that has piqued my curiosity even more, and now I just have to get to it to see why she thought it was so shocking. I need more Kristoff. I'm going to dive into that, and I'll probably go into his series, The Lotus War, as well, which is one of his first adult fantasy series he wrote. That's got a lot of Japanese samurai culture influences, and that's all I know, and I just want to check it out. Then, as we were discussing earlier with The Wars of Light and Shadow by Johnny Wirtz, Jenny Wirtz has become my new obsession. Her writing is just absolutely fantastic. So I will be reading more of her books. I will be going into the Empire trilogy by her and Raymond E. Feist. I know I'm supposed to start with the Magician books, with the Rift War saga. There's bits of it that play off in the Empire trilogy. I just don't have the time for more classic fantasy at the moment. I know this is another classic fantasy, but this is just one I'm dying to get to. I just don't have the inspiration to get to these at the moment. I own a ton of Raymond D. Feist books. Like I have tons here. You can't see it because it's down below the shelving, but down below where the camera is facing. But I am going to get to more Raymond D. Feist, but I'm going to start with the Empire trilogy as I'll be reading that for Friend about midway through the year, which is pretty exciting. It's just a good political fantasy, a young lady who's lost her family, inherits a throne in a patriarchal society. It's going to have good world building. It's going to have good characters. I can't wait to get into that one. And we've talked a lot about big classics in the fantasy space, but I've got to get some new modern stuff in there too. So for some fun, I'm going to be reading The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan, a king's justice, just getting wound up in a mystery in a time of civil unrest. It just sounds fun. I've read the first couple of pages. I'm also going to be reading this one with a friend as well, so I can't just jump into it straight away. But I have a feeling as soon as I hit a slump in 2025, this is the series I'll be jumping into to just get me re-excited. It just sounds fun, modern, fresh. And I think this is something that I could probably get through in a weekend. I'm very excited to get to this trilogy and to check out Richard Swan, as I think he's going to be an author I quite like. Then jumping back to the dark classics, I will be going into The Black Company by Glenn Cook. Sometimes people credit this as the starting place of grimdark fantasy or an inspiration for Stephen Erickson, who writes Malazan. This is a dark military fantasy. The writing style is written by the Black Company, a mercenary company's medic. So each book sometimes changes who the medic is and who's writing this records. And we're just seeing this company go through these wars. It's 10 books long and just finding themselves wound up in a bigger story. I hear the world building is huge and epic. I've got good friends that watch the channel that have told me I'm going to like this one, and I just can't wait to get into it. It sounds like everything I love in fantasy. Then going slightly lighter and a lot newer, Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. I know very little about this, except that Grace of Kings is like a short story collection of just a rapid fire stories going over the history to set up the next 3 books to come in a modern fantasy epic. I don't want to know too much else than that. I'm pretty sure this is going to be something I love, and I just want to get into it and go into it with a very open mind. Then the next one I probably should have put in my continuation series, the series I'm continuing, because this is the Shadowbinders series by Andrew Watson, another booktuber. He has an account, absolutely phenomenal account. You should be checking that out if you haven't already. But I read his book Silence is Silver, his prequel novella for this series earlier in the year. I read it in a sitting. I found his writing beautiful. It felt like a Dune-esque inspired fantasy story of someone in a very religious society just going through their trials to become an adult, trying to figure out what they want to do with their lives. It was beautifully written, and I can't believe I haven't gotten to the next books yet. I was just talking to a friend about it yesterday, and she was telling me I'm going to love it, and especially if I like Silence is Silver. So I will be diving into that next year somehow. I'll try to find the time. And the last new thing in the fantasy, but fantasy adjacent space, because this is a sci-fi I'll be starting, is Spear of the Emperor. Now, all I know is my friend thinks this is going to be a book I like. We're going to be reading it together. This is a Warhammer 40k book. I've been wanting to try out Warhammer for a very long time. I know this is an unconventional starting point. One of my clients actually works at a Warhammer 40k store, and he reckons if you're already an experienced reader, you don't have to jump in at like the Horus Rising point or any other point. You should be able to get away with Spear of the Emperor. It's a standalone, so I'm excited for that. And just to get some real gritty space opera back, I haven't had something that's met that taste since I read Sun Eater way earlier in the year, and before that, more like on the gritty dark side of space opera, just people going to war, was Red Rising. I'm craving that, so I'm hoping I get some of that out of Spear of the Emperor. All right, I think we're making good time. I'm going to make it to work on time. The next category we're going through are the new books I'm going to be checking out, the new releases that are coming out in 2025 that I'm most excited for. There's only 5. Next year in November, we are going to get the last book of the Empire of the Vampire trilogy. I so hope Jay lands the boat. I was a little bit disappointed with how he ended Dark Dawn, but this is my favorite trilogy of all time, and I haven't even got the 3rd book yet. Oh, I'm excited. It is going to be an insane book. Jay Kristoff's writing is just beautiful. This better be everything I'm expecting, guys. I have been hyping up the Empire of the Vampire on this channel non-stop. You guys are so sick of me talking about it. I don't care. But if Jay messes up the last book, I will never be seen on YouTube again. I don't think he'll mess it up. I think it's going to be an absolute hit. Oh, it's going to be so dark. It's going to be good, guys. It's going to be good. And then another one I'm hoping finishes strong. One of my other favorite series of all time, Sun Eater, Shadows Upon Time, the 7th book of the series, is going to be coming out next year. I think. It may not be. I don't think that's been announced yet. I would have to fact check myself, and I won't. But that is another series conclusion I am super excited for. This one and Red God, just the 2 big space operas coming to an end. I don't know if Red God is anywhere near being released, so I didn't put that on the list. If that was to come out, I would love that, but I'm not holding any hopes that Pierce is going to write that quickly. Christopher, though, he usually sticks to his schedule, so I think it'd be more likely that we'd get the end to Sun Eater than we are Red Rising next year. But I could be wrong. I don't know. I just talk about books. I don't think too much. Then another one of my series that's getting a new entry, but not a last book, is the Bound and the Broken series by Ryan Cahill. So Aragon meets the Faithful and the Fallen. Huge, sprawling, epic fantasy, rebellion, dragons, elves, dwarves, classic world building, modern writing. We're getting the 4th book in the series of Empires and Dust. This is going to be the 2nd to last main novel in this series. The last book to come out of War and Ruin was like a 1,500 page book. I read it in 3 days. I absolutely love Ryan's writing, and each book he does gets better. I am expecting of Empires and Dust to be a top 3 read next year, even given all those other books I've been talking about. It is one of these series that just reignited my love for reading and fantasy. I can't wait. And the 2 other new books I'm super excited for are new books, are new series. They are The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. I'm sure I'm going to love it. I've been loving everything by Abercrombie so far. I actually don't know what this is about. I'm not going to check what it's about. All I need to know is it's Abercrombie, it's fantasy. I'll get into it. And the other one is Grave Empire, or Empire of the Grave, something along those lines, by Richard Swan. The cover looks exactly like the Empire of the Vampire covers, so I was sold. But yeah, same author as Empire of the Wolf, same world as Empire of the Wolf. So I'm expecting if I like this, I'll jump straight into Grave Empire. Though if I don't like this, I guess I might not read it, but I just don't see that being a possibility for this one. Now for the outside of fantasy books that I really want, and I'm pretty sure these will be a top priority for me to get to. So where some of those series, I might not get to all the books. This whole list I do plan on getting to. I like to read 1 out of genre book per month, just to make sure I'm still expanding my mind. And I do read some non-fiction that I don't talk about on this channel, but talking about the fiction, non-fantasy books I'll read. So I do want to continue reading Cormac McCarthy. I've got a bunch of his books. So I want to continue with Blood Meridian and All the Pretty Horses. Those are the 2 next priorities I have for him. Everything I've read from him so far, being The Road and No Country for Old Men, have been just really intense, really full-on, really good reads. Just a very simple but impactful writing style, and just really well done stories. I'm excited to read more Cormac McCarthy. I will also go back to reading more Stephen King. The Stand will be my main priority when it comes to King for next year. It's a big book, so that might be the only King I do. I might do some more. I've got The Green Mile sitting down at the bottom of my shelf, so I might get into that one. Then along the lines of checking out Cormac McCarthy, I also want to get into, I wouldn't be able to say his name appropriately, the author of Crime and Punishment and Brothers Karamazov. I probably didn't even say that one right. This is an author I've been wanting to check out for a long time. Just some really full-on intense reads. I'm excited to check it out. I like exploring the darker sides of humanity in books, and this is what I'm keen to get into. Then speaking of exploring the darker sides of humanity, I forgot to mention in my new fantasy series I want to check out the Second Apocalypse series by R. Scott Baker. A second apocalypse has come. There's a holy war going on, and so much more. Super dark. This is going to be a very uncomfortable read, a very grim read. I've been watching Philip Chase's and Joanna Reed's reviews for this series. It sounds super uncomfortable and unsettling, but I'm very interested, and it sounds messed up, and I'm just curious. I need to see what it's like. Then there's a list of classics that I want to get to. So The Count of Monte Cristo, Of Mice and Men, Frankenstein, and 1984. Just, I don't know if they're all classified as classics, but they're all classics to the genre of fiction, and I just want to check them out, expand my horizons, actually learn a bit more about the history of fiction. So I'm excited to get into those stories. Then I need to get to more sci-fi because for some reason I just didn't see any on my TBR. So I'll check out Hyperion by Dan Simmons because Johan from Library for Viking is just always hyping it up, and I need to get to it. So that's the 100-ish books that I hope to get to in 2025. I have no idea how many books I'm going to read. I want to slow down, take my time with books. So if I was to just read 50 books next year, I'd be pretty happy with that. I think that would be appropriate, and then I could give you guys a deeper, better analysis of the books. But I do have a lingering eye, and these are the books and series that I have a lingering eye for that I may end up reading. Now, I've had The Powder Mage by Brian McClellan sitting on my shelf for 2 years, and I still haven't got to it. That's embarrassing. So I might actually get to The Powder Mage and start that one next year. Hopefully. I don't know. I think I'm going to like that one, but I've heard mixed reviews, so I could see myself not liking that one as well. The other series I've had on my shelf for a very long time is, standalone, I should say, sorry, is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, a cozy fantasy. This one I think is more likely for me to read because it's a very short book. Like, look how massive the font is on those pages. So I think when I need a palate cleanser, I will check this one out. I don't think cozy fantasy will be for me, but I'm hoping it'll just be like a fun little break, just like the Illuminae Files has been, with being just a YA series, which isn't something I normally read either. Then coming back down to the bottom of the shelf again, I've got a bunch of Ursula K. Le Guin, The Books of Earthsea. I need to read this book. I know these are going to be great. I just wanted to get to the Elric books first because, they're both the nice editions with multiple stories in them. So my plan for long term is to read the Elric books first, and then I'll get to the Ursula K. Le Guin ones. But maybe I'll want a little bit of a change up on those shorter reads. So that's always an option too. And then an author I've been loving this year that I just need to find the time to read again is Terry Pratchett. Discworld is just fun, whimsical, witty, smart, comedic. I would love to get to some more Discworld this year. Or next year, sorry, I should say. I just need to find the time because I love the Discworld I've read so far, and I just need to get more of that whimsical, quirky world. Oh, so many books. There's just so many books. And one of the authors that took over my TBR this year, Andy Peliquin, I need to get back to Darkblade. I've only read the first Darkblade book. I loved it. I loved his Queen of Thieves trilogy when I read it. I've raved about that a lot recently. But I haven't started his Silent Champions books, and I think these are going to be my favorite because these are, multi-POV stories, more hanging out of a warband rather than just a single POV assassin story. I need to check these books out. I just don't know if I'll have the time to do it next year, but they are shorter reads, and I do have a friend that is checking this one out early next year, so hopefully I can read that one with him. It's just a matter of finding time because, look, there's just a lot of books I want to read, guys. So for last fantasy series, I want to check out the Adan trilogy by Philip Chase. I love Philip's channel on BookTube. His analysis is fantastic. A modern fantasy series inspired by Lord of the Rings. I think I'm going to love the Adan. I think I'm going to love the Adan trilogy. He's got the audiobooks running now. I should get to that as soon as possible. It's just a time thing. The other indie author I really need to get into is Philip C. Quantrell with his Echo Saga stories. He's got 3 separate series. They all look really fun. They just look like classic fantasy with modern writing. So just that same sort of thing as Philip Chase and Ryan Cahill with their series. I'm just overwhelmed by the amount of books he has written. So that's the reason I haven't started him yet. And I'd also want to check out Daniel Abraham and the Long Price Quartet and his Dagger and Coin series, and just anything by him. He just sounds like those are going to be books, series I like. But that is all my reading plans laid out for 2025. I think I've mentioned over 130, 120, 130 books. I won't get to all of those. I'll only get to about 50 to 80 books next year. But I hope it's a good time. Let me know what you guys are going to be reading in 2025. Thank you so much for watching, and just have a great day.